care, you should know all this. And I'll tell you later why you should know. Or maybe you could tell, but you know. All right. Oh, and she has her office in Lakewood, and you have one in Riverside? Santa Ana. What happened to the one in Riverside?
It's too long of a drive. I can't. It's just me, so it's hard for me to drive.
Just say it's too hot.
I have a lot of clients actually in Palm Springs, so I do go to Palm Springs about twice a month.
Okay.
With them, I was just there recently, and yes, it's too hot. It's 110.
And I gotta tell you a little bit about this little girl. She spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. Oh, 6 years. That means I have to salute you.
Nope.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, this is the most beautiful Marine I've seen.
Nobody ever believes me when I tell them I was in the Marines. They're like, "You have to be a certain height, or you just have to pass the physical fitness test."
And that's hard enough as well.
I can.
I was in the Marines.
Oh, great. My nephew's in the Marine Corps too. He just joined last year.
Why Marines? How come not Army? Who's tough?
Marines.
Marines are brainwashed. Because when I got out of the service, I don't have nothing to do with the Army. When the Marines get out, they're still tight.
It's called camaraderie.
Oh, you know what? My ex-son-in-law, he was a Marine. He always used to say, you know, the Marines are always first to go in. It's not true. They were the first ones to go in the Pacific. The Army was the first ones to go in Europe. Don't forget that. Marines were afraid to go to Europe.
That's not my story.
But anyway, help me welcome Sandra Diaz.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that because I'm gonna have my,
Okay.
I have my outlines here.
All right.
So, as Joe said, I am an estate planning and long-term care planning attorney. So most of what I do is estate planning. So I do estate planning for probate, but I do estate planning for long-term care as well. So most of my clients are elderly people or people with disabilities that are going to need some kind of long-term care, whether it's in their home or they're moving into assisted living or a boarding care or a nursing home in a lot of cases. And so what I do is I work with the families to try to get an estate plan in place so that they can avoid going to court for a conservatorship, they can avoid a probate, and they can access government benefits either through the VA or through Medi-Cal. So most of you are familiar with living trust, right? I'm guessing you've already had that class and you talked about living trust. And the goal of your living trust is to avoid probate, right? That's what you want to do when you set up your living trust. I want to avoid probate. I want to make sure that when I die, everything goes to my heirs without them having to go through the court process. And most of us, that's all we need. But what happens then is sometimes people, we plan to die, and that's what the living trust is going to do. But what we don't plan for is to get sick and require a lot of assistance. And so that's what the long-term care planning does. So in my office, I always say the living trust is for what happens when you die, and the long-term care planning is what happens if I don't die. What happens if I get sick and now I need assistance at home. In California, the average cost of a nursing home is about $8,500 a month. And in LA County, Orange County, it's even higher than that. So most of us, even our middle class families, at $8,500 a month, we're gonna lose all of our money pretty quickly. Because even if you have some savings at $8,500 a month, it's gonna go fairly quickly. And a lot of times I have a couple that comes in, and one of them is going into a nursing home and one of them is still at home. So we need to have enough money to not only take care of the person in the nursing home, but to take care of the spouse at home. And so that's what we do. We sit down with the family, we try to figure out a way for them to access these government benefits and make sure that the spouse at home is taken care of and all of the assets aren't being used for the spouse that's in a facility, what they call the institutionalized spouse. So in California, we have two benefits that we can access to pay for long-term care. One of them is through the VA, and one of them is through the state of California, which is our Medicaid program, and here in California we call it Medi-Cal. So I'm going to talk about the VA program first, because the VA rules are very, very strict now. As of October of last year, the VA changed the rules, and they've made it pretty difficult for our veterans or spouses of veterans to do any kind of advanced planning for VA benefits. So the VA, most of us are familiar with veterans that get what's called compensation. And the VA has two different sides to it. One side is the compensation side, and one side is the pension side. I deal mostly with the pension. I don't deal with compensation too much, and I'll explain why. So compensation is what, like I said, most of us are familiar with. You have a veteran who served in Vietnam, who was exposed to Agent Orange, and now they've developed breathing problems, or they have cancer or leukemia. And so the military can directly connect their illness to their time in the service. That's a compensation claim. So the veteran files a claim with the VA, says to the VA, hey, I have this illness and it's directly related to my time in the service. I want to file a claim for compensation. And so what the VA does is they pull the medical records, they send them to the VA hospital for an evaluation, and then they're going to make a determination based on those medical records on how much of his illness is related to his time in the service. So they give him a rating. They say, yes, we think your illness is related to your time in the service, but we think it's only 10% or 20%. So when we submit an application for compensation, you want to submit every illness that that veteran has. So if they have migraines, if they have high blood pressure, if they have diabetes, if they have asthma, you want to have that all in the application, because our goal is to get 10% for this and 20% for that. And so we want eventually to have a 100% rating. Because if we can get that veteran 100% rating, they're going to get the maximum benefit from the VA, which is a little over $3,000 a month. And that's a great benefit, but you have to show the connection between your illness and your time in the service. The process for a compensation claim is about 1.5 to 2 years. It's a long process, and it has to be done through the VA, which is why I don't handle a lot of compensation claims, because you have to go through VA doctors. Now, if the veteran submits their claim and they go through the VA and the VA either denies it or gives them a very low rating, then that's when we as attorneys can step in and we can appeal the claim. So we can appeal it and we can ask for them to give us a higher rating, and at that point attorneys can step in. But the federal rules actually say that attorneys cannot help or cannot charge clients to prepare the application for them, so they have to rely on the VA 100%. Which is not always a bad thing. We have a lot of VSOs that are very loyal to our veterans, but we have a lot of VSOs that don't really know what they're doing. And so if you get a good one, it's great. There used to be a great one here in Long Beach that helped Vietnam veterans, and she always fought for her veterans. But then there's some, like I said, that just don't know the process very well. So compensation, strictly based on your medical records and whether your injury or your illness is directly related to your time in the service. There is no need to show your finances. They don't care how much money you have in the bank. They don't care how much income you make every month. It's strictly based on your medical records. And if you qualify, like I said, you get the benefit, and it's all dependent on the percentage. You get the rating that you get. If you're 100%, you get $3,000. If you're less than that, it goes down from there. Okay, any questions on the compensation? And if you qualify for compensation, by the way, the veteran is eligible for all their medical services provided at the VA hospital free of charge.
If a person already did they submit the case and he went, can we submit it again because he's finding out more sickness?
Yeah, you can ask for a change in your rating. Absolutely. You don't have to submit again. You're just asking for a reevaluation. So they don't stop your benefits. You'll continue to get the benefit, and then once they process the reevaluation, if they give them a higher rating, then they give you the higher benefit. You can always add to it. Okay, so then on the other side of the VA is the pension plan, the pension program. And that program is a needs-based program. So in order to qualify for that program, the veteran has to show that they have financial need. So they're going to look at income and they're going to look at assets. But before they get to all of that, they're going to look at all these other things. And I gave you a handout that says general qualifications for non-service connected aid and attendance. So very first thing they're gonna look at is your dates of service. You have to, the veteran has to have served at least 90 days of active duty, and one of those days had to be during the period of war. Those of you who have been to my class before, you know that Joe missed it by 1 day. Literally 1 day, he doesn't qualify for this
So
program.
I'm gonna make a collection for me at the end of the class, so I could get some medical benefits.
Yeah. So that's the very first thing they're gonna look at is the dates. Did the veteran serve 90 days and was at least one of those days during the period of war? And the periods are listed in this handout that I gave you. Now, this particular program of the VA does apply to surviving spouses. So if I have a widow of a veteran, the veteran passed away, she's still alive, they were married at the time of his death and he or she has not remarried, then that spouse is eligible for this benefit as well. So they're gonna look, of course, at the veteran's discharge records. The veteran also has to have anything other than a dishonorable discharge. So if I have a veteran with a dishonorable discharge, they would not be eligible. But any other discharge would be eligible. So if they have a general discharge, honorable, or medical, or anything else, they would be eligible for the benefit. And then they're gonna have the claimant submit a physician's report. And that physician's report has to say that the person requires assistance with the activities of daily living. What are the activities of daily living? Things that we do every day. Can I get out of bed by myself? Can I bathe myself? Can I dress myself? Can I prepare my meals? Can I feed myself? Can I manage my finances? Can I manage my medications? If the doctor says that the person needs assistance with at least 2 of those things, then they're going to be eligible for the program. And that doesn't have to be a VA doctor, by the way, for this particular program. It's a report it's a standard form that the VA puts out, and it can be filled out by any MD. So sometimes I have people that go to their primaries, sometimes they go to their neurologist. It can be anybody who's an MD that can fill out the form for them. And then if they meet all of those requirements, then the VA is going to look at income and assets. Because like I said, this is a needs-based program. On the asset side, the VA, in October, like I said, changed the rules, and the applicant can have no more than $126,400 in their accounts. And that's all of their accounts. That's checking, savings, money market, retirement accounts. If they have life insurance policies, it includes cash values and life insurance policies. So all together, the claimant can have no more than $126,000. And then they're going to look at income. It does not include their home, by the way. Their home is excluded, and so is their one vehicle. All their personal belongings are excluded. These are just liquid assets. And then they're going to look at the income. The VA has no maximum for the income, but the way that they calculate income for VA, they call it your income for VA purposes, your IVAC. They're going to look at everything coming in. So if I have a veteran that gets $2,000 a month in Social Security and that's it, that's all of their income, they're going to deduct from that any recurring medical expenses that they have. So if they're paying health insurance premiums, that gets deducted. If they're paying an in-home caregiver, that gets deducted. If they have assisted living, that gets deducted. So anything that's a recurring medical expense gets deducted from their income. So, for example, I'm working on a case right now. It's a single veteran. He has about $2,200 a month in income, but he's in he's in assisted living, and he's paying $3,100 a month. So for VA purposes, he's negative $900 every month. So when I submitted his application and they asked me for his IVAP is a negative $900 every month. So if you meet all of those requirements, your income is 0 or negative, your assets are below the $126,000, they're going to give you a monthly pension. And I have the pension rates at the very bottom of this handout. For a single veteran, he or she can get $1,830 a month. A married veteran gets $2,169, and a surviving spouse of a veteran gets $1,176 a month. And on the rare occasion that I have 2 veterans that are married to each other, they get $2,903 a month. It's not a whole lot of money, but it makes a huge difference when you're deciding where to place your mom or your dad or your spouse. Whether it's a single private room in assisted living or a shared room in assisted living. Whether it's 10 hours a week of in-home care or 20 hours a week of in-home care. It makes a huge listed as having this additional income. And it is tax-free to the veteran or the spouse of the veteran. And it's tax-free, and they get it for the rest of their lives. And when they pass away, the VA closes the case, there's no recovery, they never try to recover from the estate anything that they paid on the person's behalf. Yes?
A quick question. I have a client that mom is in assisted care with VA benefit, helping to pay for it, owns a house free and clear, talking about selling the house. If she had the assets now, I guess she'd probably have to claim them to
Right.
VA, right?
Right, so the house is an exempt asset, but when you sell a house and you convert it to cash, then it's gonna tip her over the limit. And there are things you can do to protect the house. There are certain types of trusts that you can do. So let me go back to the planning that we can do, because it's really important. The rules, when the rules changed in October, it kind of tied our hands as far as what we can do. So we used to be able to, the VA used to say, hey, we don't care what you had prior to the date of application, because all we want to know is from the date you applied, what assets do you have in your name? But now the VA has implemented a look-back period, and they basically said, hey, if you give away your assets just so you can qualify for VA benefits, we're going to implement a penalty period. And so they implemented a 3-year look-back period, and they did raise the asset limit. It used to be $80,000, now it's $126,000. There are things you can do to spend down your assets. You can make repairs to the house, you can pay mortgages, you can pay credit cards or any debt that you have. You can buy a handicap van or a new car. So there are things you can do that the VA allows for you to spend down your assets, but that's not going to be a whole lot of money. So if I have a client that's just a little bit over, maybe we do a spend down. But if I have a client that has an extra $150,000, we don't really want to spend that down, because then that money's gone and they can't have it anymore. So now the best we can do is we can pre-plan and try to do all the gifting and then apply for benefits in 3 years after the penalty's over. But the house, remember, is an exempt asset, so you can do anything you want.